Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri.
And Amy Cornell.
And this show was, I got to tell you, honestly, this show has been sitting on our show idea list for a while because I was like, Amy, I think we've done this show before. And we had a conversation during the last podcast recording, and then again when we were in the green room just now, just about how really relevant this is. Amy, talk a little bit about or share kind of the genesis of this idea for you.
Yeah, I think so. We wanted to talk about, and as you mentioned, Penny, we've done shows on budgeting, planning, things like that. And that's kind of like why we were like, okay, we want to make sure we're making this different, because while repeating ourselves sometimes makes sense, we don't want to repeat ourselves to the extent that it's not helpful anymore. But this is really different because I think, and we see it all the time, and it makes sense, a lot of authors go into the publishing business not fully understanding what it takes to compete. And believe it or not, when we figure out our programs and our pricing, similar to how we figure out our podcast show ideas, so much of it is based on the needs of authors, what's going on in the industry, what's working, what's not, so this is going to be a really insightful show, because we hear from authors all the time, I've tried this, that, and that, and none of it's working. Or I hired a firm last year and this is what they did and it didn't work. Or, you know what I mean? The list goes on, right, Penny, of all the things that can go wrong when it comes to planning to promote your book and what's realistic to spend and what to expect to spend.
Well, and I think that, so you and an author, and this sometimes happens where an author will say, I can get this on Fiverr, or I can get that on Fiverr, or whatever cheapo service for like $50 or whatever. And so and this isn't, and just to be clear, y'all, this isn't about why we're so fabulous. I think that we speak for marketing and PR firms anywhere, because I think we're all sort of, coming up against the same questions from authors, like, why is book marketing so expensive? Well, I mean, and we're going to go down the list, but you're paying for expertise. But I think one of the biggest issues, so I talked to an author recently, and this author said, I went from making 20,000 and more a year to making, 3,000 and sometimes less than that. And what this author said to me is that they've hired these onesie twosies, so these little small one-off services where you get a book tour, or you get a this, or you get that, and there's really nothing cohesive about it. And my sense is that's probably what happened in this case, and why this author's revenue kind of took a nosedive.
Exactly.
Because there's nothing wrong with having, wanting to start off hiring $50, somebody's $50 here or somebody there, but you have to really be strategic about it too, because these people come in and they do this work and they don't really know what you're doing over here or what you did last week or anything like that, because that's not really their job, right? And they don't have probably the staff or anything in their budget to sit you down and say, okay, let's look at the big picture. I mean, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think that's a very good point. When you hire people for one-off services, they don't get immersed, like you said, Penny, in the big picture. And so one of the major benefits of working with an actual team, a firm that does a lot of different things for you and makes specific recommendations, that is, I think, a key part too, Penny, is that if you can just go out and tell somebody, I want this, and they say, sure, pay me I'll have it done by the end of the week, it is very likely that that service is not going to be super custom to you, your brand, your goals, what you've done in the past, what you plan to do in the future. Whereas if you go somewhere and say, I want this, but then you get a little pushback and they say, well, okay, what kind of budget are you looking to work within? What are your goals? Are you releasing another book this year? What have you done in the last year to market? Are you on social media? What does your website look like? If you are getting pushback like that, that person is taking so much into consideration in order to ensure you get set off on the right path versus saying, yeah, just click the little buy now button and I'll have it to you in 48 hours. You know what I mean? There's such a
Right.
big difference between those two approaches.
Well, and I think what you address here is really important. That's part of the reason why I do calls with authors, because I had a call this morning, which was great. And I asked them, what have they done up to this point? What are they planning? What are their goals? Where are they going? Like, it all matters.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing, a one-off service, and, also, I mean, again, this is not us saying, this is not us bad mouthing these one-off services, but you got to be careful, because they are not, are you buying the right thing? Is this really what you need right now? Or is there, could your money be spent somewhere else? Because I know that, I know a lot of authors who have taken, like, they're like, oh my gosh, before I realized that I just spent $5,000 on these onesie twosie services. So you got to be careful, because one way or another, the money's going out the door. Right.
Right.
So, but, then we had an author who, asked us, really wanted to work with us, but said, can you charge me half as much as what you're charging me? And Amy's kind of laughing, because we were going back and forth in text on this, and it was hilarious. But, I mean, I would love to live in a world where 50% of everything that we did was just complete markup, and I had that kind of flexibility.
Right.
Most PR companies don't. I mean, I really want to go. I have to get a new car, and I want to try that. I want to go into a car dealer and just be like, hey, so can you just knock 50% off of this?
Right. Exactly. I have big goals to own this car, but for half the price you're charging. How can you make that happen? Like, and I know, and I said to Penny, I said, it's amazing that some people must think that we're just sitting here and lighting our candles with $100 bills during the day, for our, like, to create, but it's like, absolutely not. Believe it or not, like, and I've told people this I've been very candid with people. It's like, we ask the questions we ask, we push back because we want to go into a collaboration that is going to serve the clients we work with. You know what I mean? We have a vested interest in seeing improvements in your platform, in your exposure, you know what I mean, in your conversions. We want to see all that. Otherwise we would have just a buy now button on the website, but it is not that easy to work with us. We do want some information. We do want to understand what your goals are. And it does, all of that comes, and it's not come with a premium cost because we want to waste your time, but it comes with a cost because we want to make sure we are making recommendations that you will see results from.
Right.
And results come in many different forms, and that's another thing that's really complex about this too, is that results, believe it or not, for most of you listening, are more than just sales. Like, yes, we all want to sell a bunch of books. Penny releases books. Penny wants to sell a lot of books. But results, in order to actually have a successful book, there are a lot of different types of results that you need to see that contribute to those sales numbers.
Right.
And we focus on all of that. And that's something else that you really can't expect a one-off service to focus on. I would say the only way those one-off services work, Penny, is if you already know what you need, what the results should be, how it should be done, and you are literally hiring somebody to execute something you already know about just because you don't have time.
That's a really, really great way to put it. And it is very much like, I mean, we always talk about this. We talk about, the business example, right? The running a business. When you are running a business, you hire by expertise, right? So, like, I hire a bookkeeper, I hire a CPA. I hire somebody to build a website. You know what I mean? You hire by expertise. You have you have this puzzle that you're trying to put together that is your book marketing. And you want to find the right pieces, but you got to have the full picture first, right?
Mhm.
And we talk about, in the context of building a business, waiting to market is a non-starter. Don't wait to market your book to see what the book's going to do. We've talked about this a lot in our shows, probably to the point where you're just like beating your head against the wall when you're listening, that you're like, oh my gosh, they sound like a broken record. And part of the other piece of it too, when you're looking for these marketing partners, right, is that it's easier to build a brand early and build on momentum than it is trying to recover and doing very little. So we just did a show. We did a few discovery shows, actually 3 discovery shows at the beginning of the year, where we talked about like, how do you recover when your Amazon listing is a disaster and you can't find your book? I mean, those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. But in terms of, marketing costs money because you're paying for expertise. Flat out, good companies, if it's a good marketing firm, they're always like, we invest in our growth to the point that I'm obnoxious about taking classes and evolving and reading and studying and doing all the things. Like, I know that I drive everybody else crazy. I'm a firm believer that we are here to gather up the knowledge and then disseminate and let it inform our programs to the degree that it matters, that it's really going to change the landscape for authors, right? That's part of the reason why we change our campaigns up periodically, sometimes even, every quarter.
Yeah.
But you're paying for all of the expertise that the company has, or the individual has garnered. And we've been doing this, collectively for, I don't know, probably over 40 years between the two of us.
Oh yeah. Well,
And
not to mention the other members of the team,
right,
like,
exactly. We're probably to half a century at this point, but I mean, it is.
yeah, we haven't aged a day.
We haven't aged it. I know, right? We haven't aged a day. Sometimes it's really hard keeping up with the changes. In fact, this author that I spoke to this morning was telling me, they said it's really is like, it's dizzying to try to keep up with everything. And that's another reason why you want to hire, when you hire a marketing firm, what you're paying for is you're paying for that level of expertise. You're paying for them to know every single time. I mean, I cannot tell you, I'm not the only one who's addicted to learning and finding new things. Amy is always texting me about, did you know Amazon's doing this? Did you know Amazon's doing that? Did you know? And I write about Amazon. I don't know that I'm on it as much as she is now. But you're always spotting things that have changed with Amazon. And it's mind-numbing. I can understand why authors look at Amazon and just throw their hands up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's the number one reason, Penny, that we get the number of return clients that we do.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people have actually found their groove in terms of like, okay, they get more consistent sales. They've got a great publishing schedule. They've got a rhythm going, but most of them, they can't make it their job to also keep up with what's going on in terms of marketing and promotion. And what we mean by that, we don't necessarily mean executing marketing strategy, but a big chunk of that is keeping up with what's going on for readers too. How they are discovering books, how they are finding books, how platforms like social media are changing how people are finding books, who the voices are in different genres or topics that you should be networking with. Like, there's so many parts to this that quite literally are a full-time job. And it's tough when you're first getting started to figure all that out. And then if you are lucky enough to find your stride and start selling consistently to where you can produce more books and release more books, it's a high quality problem to have, but it gets challenging to keep up with everything once you're in that phase of your author career as well. Because and this was the next part I wanted to bring up too, it's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of hiring a team, but that also it goes into the cost of, is that you're hiring a team of people to take some of the workload off your hands for sure. But that's also a team, that's also that many more eyes and brains that are learning about your brand, your goals, under like figuring out your book's unique selling points, figuring out custom messages that make you stand out to thought leaders or influencers. I mean, you're talking about really thoughtful. If you're hiring the right team, it should be really thoughtful. But again, multiple eyes, brains, ears, listening to what you're saying, listening to what's important to you. And all that goes into your deliverables, the execution, how your brand is represented by that team. I mean, it's one of those things that it really is like you are hiring a team. And I think a lot of times that part gets lost, Penny, too, is that it's not just this transactional click buy on the buy now button and everything just gets whipped up and delivered. You know what I mean? Like we've already talked about it. Those options are out there. But if you're hiring a team, those are the benefits to having that team, the thoughtful process, the people that are actually invested in what's going on with your brand.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. And I think that, as much as I am crazy about learning, if you're hiring a team, I mean, and I don't know that this is, I'm assuming this is pretty specific to us. I don't know a lot of other companies that do this, but I'm a huge fan of author education. So I think, if you don't want to learn, like that's fine, but your road is going to be a lot harder as an author if you don't, and I'm not saying that you have to learn like all the ins and outs of, I don't know, TikTok or whatever. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I say that we infuse our campaigns with a lot of free advice and recs and author education pieces because I'm a huge fan of that. And I think that when you are hiring a company, yes, you want them to do what they're good at. Yes, you want them to do what you hired them for. But I would recommend that you also want to walk away with something that some piece of education, some new information, something that you can sink your teeth into to think, oh, I get, because my other thing though too is, and I've always said this, and it's one of the reasons that I do so many talks, the educated author makes better choices. So we want you as an author, that's why we do this podcast, to make choices that are better for you, and educating yourself will help you to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you, Penny. Not everybody's looking to learn everything, and we get it. But I'm really proud of the fact that we want our clients to walk away with a little more confidence in what's going on with their brand and their platform, and understanding at least the basics of how to function out there, because it gets I will say this too, it gets a lot more expensive if you don't want to learn anything.
Yes. So true.
Because you are essentially starting from scratch every time. And hey, if you want to hire us, start from scratch every time you release a book, fine. But that's actually, believe it or not, how we set up our programs. Like we would much rather set you up for success in the way where we can work with you through multiple releases, and then you can actually afford that. And it serves you. And every time you work with us, your platform and your visibility and your sales you get to that next level. You know what I mean? Like that's really what we designed for. And if you're hiring a team like ours, like you're getting a team that is going to immerse themselves. I talked about this already, but in your brand. And that's why it's so great. That's why we get so many return clients, because I think our clients really feel like we understand what's going on with their books and what's important to them. Like they have specifics too. It's like, I'm not really into that, but I am interested in these opportunities. And they can tell us that. And we can give them specific recommendations based on what they're really into and what they're looking for. And I will say also, when you work with a team that is more immersed in not just what they're doing now, but your potential, I can't tell you how often Penny will email clients and say, hey, we noticed this about your Amazon page. And it's an easy tweak, an easy fix, but it makes a big deal. And how many times a week I get responses from clients going, oh my gosh, thank you so much for pointing that out. I'm going to get that fixed this week. You know what I mean? Little things like that. Or even on their website. You know, if I'm on their website looking for something and I notice something that is in theory an easy fix, I always let them know. I have a very much, if I say something or if I see something, I say something.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how grateful our clients are for those little, like we've got their back in that regard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if we were hired for a one-off service, it's like, sorry, I'm not going to go digging around in all the things. I'm going to do what you hired me for and then we're done. But, you know, when you get somebody that's immersed in your entire brand, it's an entirely different experience. And then also, I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm going to do a shameless promotion here. Like, we also give our return client pricing, because there
Yeah.
is a benefit to building off of the work that somebody has done for you. So when clients come back to us, we're able to offer return client pricing because I'm going to be honest, we know that that foundation was set correctly because we were there for that, right?
Yeah.
It's like we know what's already there. We know what they're working with. We know what was achieved last time. We know what level their platform's at and what we're working from to build from there. And it's so great. And I love working with return clients because I will tell you, y'all, every time we work with a client again, there's like a different level of creativity. And I love being a part of that, like that natural progression in their career too. It's really cool.
Yeah. It is really cool because we just had an author. I mentioned that when we were in the green room, we just had an author contact us. We've worked with him for, I think, 4 or 5 books, maybe
Yeah,
more.
at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And we love that. And that's another piece of this too. I mean, again, if you have a one-off company that you've had great success with, and you know what they're going to do, what they're going to deliver, and you like it and it's worth it, that's great. But as I mentioned early on, you can fritter away a lot of money on one-off promotions
Mm-hmm.
that seem cheaper, but then in the end, you're, like I said, you're $5,000-6,000 down the road, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So if you are, understand that with experience, with service, with a company that is going to help you build you up from your, in some cases from the ground up in your foundation, um, as well as help you with your author education, that comes with a price. And that is something that should be part of, your business plan. In some cases, when it's not, like, I get it, everything, like when it comes to publishing, like, it seems like your book books are typically very front loaded with costs, and that's always been a thing. But just know what you're hiring for, and make sure that like I said, it's like a puzzle, right? You're looking for the pieces, as opposed to, you're working off of your set of goals. You're working off of some kind of an idea of what you want, instead of just saying, oh, well, this is $100. This seems good. I'll get a couple of reviews. That's great. Because it just doesn't, it never really seems to work out for the authors.
It really doesn't. And we get the emails. We have the receipts to prove it. This is not just us saying like, no, the only way to do this is to hire us. As much as we'd love to work with all of you at some point, but you're so right, Penny. Like, we get those emails, oh my gosh, I've done all the things, but nothing is working, And so much of it comes from a lack of organization as well, too, don't you think?
Yeah, it comes from comes from a lack of organization, but I also think that when, a lot of times the companies that are out there right now that are doing inexpensive stuff, they're usually review centered. And I understand, and we always preach this too. There's no such thing as too many reviews. I fully appreciate that. But I think if you're also looking at just hiring a review only service,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's one piece of a bigger pie, right? So we never sell just reviews, not because we are, you have to pay us this money and we have to do Amazon and we want to do this thing. But isolated services like that, in my opinion, typically don't work. But the review services that are out there, you just want to be sort of cautious because Amazon's changing their guidelines all the time. So you want to make sure, like, sometimes the review services have people who are international, and there's nothing wrong with having people in, I don't know, Spain read your book and write a review, but Amazon doesn't always permit that. So I think in, just getting reviews, and do reviews move the needle? No. Right. Okay. So if you have 400,000 reviews, that's probably moving quite a few needles for you.
Right.
But this is another reason why we don't sell one-off programs. I mean, only like our Amazon stuff, but part of the reason of that is one of the things that we've discovered and that our years of experience has shown us is that campaigns that do well for an author are typically they're multiple pieces, right? So there's publicity and then there's book marketing, and it's combined into a campaign that's strategic to your goals, your budget, your, all the things, right? Because it does take multiple impressions. And again, love reviews all the time, all day long, but reviews in and of themselves aren't going to move the needle.
Right. It takes a lot of different pieces playing off of each other. And
it takes a lot of different pieces playing off of each other.
And that's a really good point, Penny, too, is that, and that really is the main reason when people say, well, I just want this. It's like, well, in good conscience, we don't do that because it's very, very rare that an author will come to us and everything is perfect aside from one thing. And that's not a knock. It's just, this is a complex industry to compete in,
Yeah.
And if you have not been doing this a long time and have worked with a team and have learned from that and have figured out all the things, that's very fair. That's where that's the position most authors are in, So we don't do one-offs because, like Penny said, it takes more than just one thing to move the needle. And if you do things in the wrong order, right, Penny?
Oh, yeah.
There's, a lot of times, this is a big one and an easy example. Clients will say like, oh, I want to get some big time interviews secured, but they don't have a single review yet. And their description needs a little tweaking because it doesn't quite get across what their real unique aspects of their book are. So things like that, pitching your book before you have the fundamentals right is a big waste of time, So there are things that need to be done in certain order too. And that's something that a good marketing firm that offers actual campaigns should be taking into consideration as well. The order in which you do things, or being honest with you and saying, not yet, but maybe in the future, here's what you should focus on now. And if you're not getting that kind of feedback, if you're just getting, yes, great, thanks. I know I've said it before, but click buy now and we'll get started. That is a sign that they are not actually, really invested in what's going to work for your book. They just want you to hire them to do the work.
Right. Exactly. And, one of our upcoming shows, this is another one that's been on our list for a while, but I think it's really time to do it. One of our upcoming shows is how to get picked up by bigger media, because I have this conversation with authors a lot, and they'll say, well, I was really hoping to get national TV or whatever, big national magazine or something. And in a very nice way, I hope I'm nice. Maybe I don't really come across that way, but I'll tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to waste your marketing dollars on pitching you to national media because you need these 5 things. And maybe they're fresh off the publishing, like they're just published their book. They have no history. They have no platform. They have no nothing. And you really want somebody who is going to advise you in a way that benefits you and doesn't benefit them.
There you go.
And that's the long and short. You really want to align yourself with a company, or even if it is a one-off service, what can you do that's going to benefit you, not just benefit them? That's really, and I'll tell you something, at the heart of it, man, we should add that tagline to the website. That's exactly what we are about. So I hope this didn't come across as like, oh, we're just so fabulous, because
we are pretty fabulous though.
We are fabulous. But I think that these are some really hard lessons that Some of our authors, unfortunately, have learned the hard way. And
100.
like this author that I spoke to this morning, and the books, let me tell you, this author's books they look great. They are fabulous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when you start at selling $20,000 of books a year and you're not going up from there, there is something really wrong here.
Yeah.
We hope that you've enjoyed this show. Again, if you find the show helpful, please share it with somebody who you think can benefit by it. Make sure to subscribe to the show in whatever podcast feed you are listening to so that you get our shows every Friday. We love show ideas. We welcome show ideas. Send those our way. I actually think, now we haven't confirmed this yet, but I think we're going to have our first guest on very soon. And I'm hoping to have an influencer on our show who's going to talk about all the things, what they experience on the other side. So we always talk about, from the marketing's perspective, like put your pitch together, make sure that you have a solid message, find the right influencer, don't just spray and pray and send it all out there. And this influencer is going to talk about what it's like to be on the receiving end and some of the things that they see. And so we don't have a date for it yet, but it's coming up. Very excited. 4 years into this, we're having our first guest. Excited about that. But thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.